Good morning, everyone. I'll call to order this regular meeting of our Zoning and Planning Committee. Today is March 16th, 2017. I'm Lisa Bender. I chair the committee, and we have a quorum today with council members Reich, Goodman, Andrew Johnson, and Council President Johnson. We have 6 items on today's agenda. The first 3 items are each for public hearing, and that includes the site plan review condition of approval appeal for 4714 Cedar Avenue, variance and subdivision appeal for 3006 West 40th Street, and demolition of historic resource appeal for 2620 West 44th Street. We will return to those items in a moment after the consent agenda. The consent agenda is items 4 and 5. Item number 4 is approving an application for a rezoning at 3416 Chicago Avenue South to R4 to allow for a triplex. And item number 5 is approving the reappointments to the City Planning Commission for 5 individuals who are currently serving on that body. So I will move items 4 and 5, see if there's any discussion. Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those 2 items carry. And I will just note that we do have a discussion item at the end, which is an update of our city's comprehensive plan. I will return to that after the public hearing. So with that, we'll start with item number 1 with a staff report, and then we will open the public hearing. I do want to note that we had a request for an American Sign Language interpreter, which we do have provided. If anyone needs it, you could talk with the clerk, Diana, there at the end, so we can get that set up in the right kind of way. And this is our interpreter. Thank you for being here. Ma'am, do you think it's necessary to sign the announcement that we have an interpretation? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Chair Bender, committee members. My name is Peter Crandall. I'm a city planner in CPED land use. The appeal before you today concerns a site at 4700 to 4714 Cedar Avenue South. This was a site plan review application that was recommended and approved at the February 21st City Planning Commission meeting. The zoning on the site, as you can see from the zoning map here, is C2. The proposal is for a new 2,300 square foot commercial building with a drive-through facility. Drive-throughs are an allowed use in the C2 zoning district. A little context on the site. It's at the intersection of Cedar Avenue South and 47th Street in South Minneapolis. This is the site as it stands today. There are currently 2 buildings on the site. The applicant proposes to demolish the building on the southernmost parcel, which you can see here in the street view of the site, and to construct a separate new 2,300 square foot commercial building. The originally recommended approved site plan is shown here with an entrance, one-way drive-through entrance off of Cedar Avenue and a one-way drive-through exit off of Cedar Avenue. At the both of those curb cuts are 12 feet in width. At the February 21st City Planning Commission, the Commission added an 11th condition to the approved site plan, which states that in addition to a curb cut along 47th Street, the project shall be limited to 1 curb cut on Cedar Avenue, limited to 12 feet 2 inches as designed in the site plan, and limited to a one-way exit only. That condition would thus require all vehicles entering the site to use the 47th Street curb cut at the north end of the parking lot for the retail building. This is a site plan provided by the applicant. The applicant is appealing that particular condition in the site plan approval. This is a proposed alternative that the applicant is providing today, which closes the entrance curb cut on Cedar Avenue South and proposes to widen the exit curb cut to 22 feet at the southern end of the site. We received some feedback from Public Works on that proposed alternative. They do not see a 22-foot curb cut as approvable, but they would approve what is shown here as a potential alternative, which is a 14-foot curb cut that is shifted to the south of the drive aisle as a one-way exit alternative to the site. I believe the applicant is here. The applicant's representative is here today to speak to the issue, but I'll take any questions before that.
Any questions for staff? Okay, we'll start with the applicant then. How many people would like to speak on this item? Okay, thank you. So we'll have the applicant come on up.
Good morning. My name is Mark Thiroff. I represent the applicant, August Ventures, LLC. I wanted to put our plan back up if I could. Having a hard time finding the Zoom, but I think you can see it on your screens. Just for point of clarification, we did offer an alternative in our appeal, which involved widening the exit onto Cedar to 2 lanes. But principally, we're here this morning to ask you to take a look at the additional condition that was added at the Planning Commission level, which was the closure of the entrance off of Cedar. That plan came out of a series of meetings with staff. I think we had at least 3 meetings with staff, including at the last meeting we had a representative from Public Works there who saw our plan. We got no negative feedback on it, no suggestion that the entrance off of Cedar that you see here was in any way a problem. We incorporated all the feedback that we got and believed that that was the best plan for the property, particularly in terms of on-site traffic movements as well as ingress and egress from Cedar. If you close this entrance here, all of the traffic, as Mr. Crandall mentioned, all the entrance traffic has to come in off of 47th. So you're going to have people traveling south on Cedar who have to take a right onto 47th and immediately, immediately a left into the parking lot. Whereas with our approach and the entrance on Cedar, you'll have the ability for traffic to just enter directly from Cedar and not have to make those 2 movements. Without that entrance, you'll have people who will not notice the business that they want to get to until it's too late to enter at 47th. So they'll either end up doing a U-turn on Cedar to get back to enter into the coffee shop, or they'll take a right through the neighborhood and hook back to 47th to come in that way. Or possibly there's another coffee shop further down on 47th, and then they'll be forced to take a left turn in there. All of those are movements, traffic movements, that are not as safe as what we proposed. We were a little bit surprised by the proposal to close that, because as I said, we'd met with staff, particularly with Public Works, and they had no issue with it at all. There was no request at the meeting to add that. None of the comments from the public addressed closing that entrance. And there was just one suggestion from one Planning Commission member at the end of the meeting. So we were a little bit blindsided by it. We think our proposal is the safer of the options that's been presented, and would encourage you to follow your staff recommendation on that and go with the project as originally proposed. If you do take a look at what's been offered as an alternative of the proposals, we have indicated that we'd like to have a double lane down there so that both the bypass traffic as well as the cars that have used the drive-through have their own lane to exit the property. As between the 2 alternatives where there's just going to be a single lane there, we actually prefer what Public Works has suggested more recently, that the exit lane be for the bypass lane rather than for the drive-through lane itself. But we actually firmly believe that our proposal was the best option, and would encourage you to follow staff on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a note, there was a significant amount of public comment that raised the issue of pedestrian safety along Cedar Avenue. So I believe Commissioner Kwanzaa's motion was responding to the fact that with 2 curb cuts, you have those 2 points of conflict between people walking along the roadway and cars turning in across a pedestrian corridor on Cedar Avenue. So do you have a suggestion about why the 2 curb cuts on Cedar would be a safer option for pedestrians than the option that eliminates one of those curb cuts to reduce those conflict points?
Sure. I think we need to take an overall look at the site, and I've talked about kind of the car safety and the car traffic issues. We'll have more cars at the 47th. That's obviously going to create more potentially conflict points between pedestrians and cars. But I think we also need to look at the site as a whole. I mean, right now we have 6 lanes of ingress and egress onto the site. And the comp plan simply calls for looking for opportunities to minimize those where possible. And we were going down from 6 to 4. And I think that that was already a significant improvement for the site.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and invite anyone from the public who would like to come up and speak. And then just please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Taylor. I live pretty close to this proposed Starbucks, and I think I was here a couple of more times about this same action. I was walking down the street earlier this week, and I think I emailed the photos to Peter as well. I was walking with my family. There was a huge accident right at the proposed spot for this Starbucks, and I can only foresee more accidents happening at this proposed site. I think it's poorly planned. I think it's very capitalistic, and I think it might help the neighborhood, but are we going to take away this small town feeling in this neighborhood, or are we going to continue to gentrify Minneapolis to make it some other city that doesn't work for the residents here in the Lake Nokomis area? This is the accident was very, it wasn't tragic at all, but it did back up Cedar Avenue pretty bad across 46th Street as well, going south. So allow additional curb cuts, I can only see more accidents happening. At this point in time, I don't even walk down the street with my family anymore until the morning time where it's not as busy. But we would like to enjoy our neighborhood a lot more because we think we have a pretty nice neighborhood right now on a very quiet lake, and we would like to keep it that way. I know that the plans have already been approved, but I'm just here to voice my opinion. I hope my opinion is taken into consideration, but since things are already approved, I guess I just want to say that this is going to continue to happen without additional traffic studies for this area as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Anyone else? Last call, and then seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I did want to just check with staff one last time. We've heard some kind of pros and cons about the different traffic and pedestrian safety, and just to clarify for the council members what the conversations were with Public Works around the recommended solution here.
So what was the Public Works feedback specifically? Public Works feels that either the originally proposed site plan or the proposed alternative with the 14-foot curb cut at the southern end of the drive aisle are both approvable. They did not elaborate for me on the pros and cons of those two options, and unfortunately I was not present for the original PDR conversation to know, but and I think from a staff perspective, we also have kind of a lot of ambivalence and mixed feelings just generally about a drive-through in this location, but given that it's a allowed use, we are fine with either of those proposals as well. So
Thank you. And those two actions would be either approving or denying the appeal. We don't have to, is the original, you're saying either the original or the condition that the Planning Commission, or is the third? The 14-foot isn't quite what the Planning Commission recommended. Is that right?
The Public Works is not in favor of the proposed alternative that the applicant put forward, but they are okay with the originally approved, the originally recommended for approval site plan that staff recommended.
Or the condition that the Planning Commission added?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go ahead and move that we deny the appeal.
there's a motion, is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I will just acknowledge that at the Planning Commission and in a lot of the written comments in our packets, we did hear a lot of feedback from the surrounding neighbors that this wasn't, this kind of design with a drive-through here wasn't really the preferred development that the community wanted to see. And I talked a lot with Councilmember Quincy's office, who I know attended community meetings about this. Our regulations don't allow us to deny a drive-through here, and they do allow this kind of commercial use here. And so in other parts of the city, including Councilmember Goodman and I worked on a pedestrian-oriented overlay district that would have added some more restrictions to this kind of area. So I know Councilmember Quincy's office is now looking forward to see what kinds of things would be possible to put in place that would guide the development in a different direction on this corridor. And then we also added some conditions that were responsive to other concerns that the neighbors had brought that the applicant was happy to fulfill. So is there any further discussion on this item? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to acknowledge the gentleman from the neighborhood that spoke and say that I appreciate you being here and all the other neighbors that came out as well to the Planning Commission meeting. And this is across the street from Ward 12. I disagree with the applicants that this having only one curb cut on Cedar actually makes for more pedestrian conflicts and makes it less safe. I actually think that what the Planning Commission did ultimately makes it safer overall within the neighborhood for pedestrians and has some other benefits as well for traffic safety. It's not exactly the safest area and intersection down there, as those of us who are frequently there can attest to.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in approval of Councilmember Johnson's motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. So item number 2 is a appeal of a variance and subdivision at 3006 West 40th Street, and we will again begin with staff. How many people would like to speak on this item? Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Janelle Woodmeyer, Senior City Planner with the Community Planning and Economic Development Department. The property that will be discussed today is located at 3006 West 40th Street. What the Planning Commission considered was a proposal to split a lot that required 2 variances in a subdivision, and their decision to approve those to allow the lot split has been appealed, and those are not by the original applicants. So again, the proposal would be to split the subject property. As part of that, they'd be demolishing the existing structure in order to construct then 2 new single-family homes, one on each new lot. The zoning for this property is R1, and in the R1 district, the minimum lot size requirement is 6,000 square feet per lot with a minimum lot width requirement of 50 feet. The proposed lots would be 39.2 feet wide each, and then each corresponding lot size would be 4,900 square feet and 4,897 square feet. So these are both below the minimum requirements. So those are the 2 variances requested, one for lot width and one for lot area. And then the minor subdivision application was needed because the proposed lot line wouldn't be aligning with an underlying platted lot line. Staff recommended approval of these applications, and the Planning Commission unanimously adopted the recommendation. So here you can see, just going back to their proposal, the existing structure that would be removed, and then where they want to locate that new lot line to create the 2 new lots. So factors that were considered in these applications are: 1, this is predominantly a single-family area. This site is also located in an addition called Cottage City Addition, and the original platting for this addition is primarily consisting of smaller platted lots that are about 25 feet in width. So here's an example, a subset of that area, that addition, that includes the subject property where you can see the underlying platting. And again, mostly 25-foot wide lots make up the original platting. And this resulted in quite a variety of lot sizes in this area. So looking around this property within 350 feet, in doing an analysis, 41% of the lots are less than 6,000 square feet in area, and 30% of the lots are less than 50 feet in area. So this is reflecting that variety that I noted. And so again, looking back at the proposal here, the subject property consists of these multiple platted lots, and they are proposing to divide this into 2 lots of just about equal size. Both of these lots would have alley access, so the proposed lots don't need to have driveways to the street. And with the existing lot area, you could actually build quite a large house, but that's out of character with Character's area, which is mostly moderately sized houses. The proposed lots are also pretty close in size to a standard residential lot size of about 5,000 square feet. And so we didn't identify any issues why they couldn't be developed at this size without need for additional variances. And again, the minor subdivision was just needed because it's not aligning with the underlying platted lot lines, and that's in order to create 2 pretty equal sized lots. So we didn't identify any issues for redeveloping the site for 2 new single-family homes. The Planning Commission reiterated some of these findings, but also in their discussion, they noted that this proposal would be in the interest of expanding housing opportunities in the city. And although they didn't add any conditions of approval to the variances, they did encourage the applicant to design the proposal to minimize some impervious surfaces, make sure that their stormwater management or stormwater is managed on site. And that was in response to some of the testimony from the public hearing. So that concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Are there any questions from staff? For staff? Seeing none, let's go ahead and begin with anyone who'd like to speak. Please state your name and address for the record, and we will use the timer that Councilmember Johnson will control here. Thank you.
So that means I have 2 minutes?
We can give the first, are you the appellant, the folks that appealed the decision of the Planning Commission?
My name is Joseph Uhas. We live at 3940 Washburn Avenue South, so we live just adjacent to that property to the east. Our house sits a little bit above that property that's sitting there. So first off, you stand here and you feel like we're on trial because we're trying to block an appeal. So I wore my striped shirt to show you that we feel like we're on trial here and we're very uncomfortable about being put in this position. We didn't bring this upon ourselves. This has been cast upon us to try to protect what we currently have. So let me introduce my wife is Karen Mayer. I'm Joseph Uhas. Karen works, just for you to understand our character, we're not the 1%ers. We're working families. Karen runs the Women, Infants, and Children's program for Hennepin County. So she's worried about bringing up babies that are before they're born and making sure that they're healthy. Me, I've been a safety professional for the last 37 years. So after parents raise them and they get out into the workforce, I feel like it's my responsibility to take care of those people. So that's kind of our character. We're about taking care of things. So, and let me tell you what we're for. We're for continued development. We're not trying to block this because we're not about development. We're for continued development. We're for increased values within the neighborhood. We're not here to block this because we think it is bad just for us. We think it's bad for the neighborhood. When you start making special deals, and I do think this is a Kelm-Hellman kind of special deal, when you split a lot and you give these builders, architects, and investors a license to make all kinds of money in a very desirable neighborhood, I think that really butts up against taking care of the people that are currently in those positions. I do consider this much more than just a lot division and 2 variances. I think this is about splitting a lot, and it's actually 4 variances. You've got variances for each one of those properties. So we should be talking about these independently, not as one. They should have to present this as, now we've got a subdivision, which I think we totally oppose, and then we should be talking about variances for each one of those properties. So this whole thing should be set back and pushed through again. So I asked the question of staff in this as we were trying to prepare for this. So I said, so how good of a deal is this? How frequently for the last year have you asked for a 20% variance and approved a 20% variance? So we're talking about from 50 to 40, and from, what is it, 5,000 or 6,000 to less than 5,000. Each one of those is a 20% variance over the norm. That's an outstanding reach for the city to say, this is just, we can just postage stamp that and say that that's good. So my question to staff was, could you tell me how often you do this, how frequently it happens? Who do you do this for? Do you have a record that shows me you've done this for this builder, this developer, this architect? Can you show me where the standard has been set and this is an acceptable practice within the city? And the answer I got was, go look on the website, do the analysis yourself. I thought that was a very inappropriate answer. And I think it reflects back on the city. Either you don't have the information and shame on you for not having the information, or you have the information and you aren't willing to share it. And I consider that really an issue as well. If you aren't tracking this information, how can you say 20% variance from a lot width is acceptable? You have nothing to stand by. So then I think then again, it becomes a special deal for these guys to make a large profit over a lot width that fits within current zoning. And
so in the remaining time, I think perhaps a focus on the impacts of the subdivision would be
But I'd
helpful,
like to also talk
rather
about
than focusing on accusations to staff and council members.
I'd also like to talk about what I have tried to do to get rid of this whole thing. We've reached out, as soon as the last meeting was over, reached out to the architect and said, so what are your plans? Make us feel comfortable with what you're going to do. What are your plans? How many more variances are you going to need to do this? And the answer we got was, we don't have plans, we can't do it. So I reached out to them again this week. I said, make me feel comfortable again. Show me schematics. We're at this phase that they're ready to tear the house down. Show me schematics and show me what you're going to do for this property. Make me feel comfortable for this meeting. I got nothing. So then I reached out again and I said, so I got no response. So make me feel comfortable. And we didn't see it here on their presentation either. What are you going to do with these properties so you're not going to impact the neighbors? And then we've also, just this week, again, to get rid of this whole issue, I put an offer on the table to purchase 15 feet of the property behind my house. I said, we don't have any of the details worked out on that, but I made an offer and I've gotten no response to that. So again, they would still have 68 feet of width of property, plus still a large lot. It would give us our buffer zone that we're looking for. And it would also, again, provide them with a substantial property to build a house that we feel would fit within the neighborhood. So I'm reaching out and I'm trying to find out what is good for the neighbors. And this is what it does. It really does eliminate all the reasons for variances.